Hello and welcome back, friends. We're so glad you tuned in. This is Ridgeviews Podcast, where we try to cover everything hope, healing, and recovery related. As always, I'd like to draw your attention to our COVID-19 helpline, which is 833-503-0348. We have trained counselors available 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day of the week. How about that? Can you believe that? Every day of the week, including Sunday. So if you're wrestling with something, COVID's got you down. Maybe you're worried about housing, finances, or just your health, mental health. Give them a call. They're listening ears ready to give you some help. My guest today, Brandon Knight, back by popular demand.
How are you, sir?
Very well. So glad you're here. I love this topic today. You actually queued this one up, but it resonated beautifully for me in that a couple of years ago, I was falling into this deep well of curiosity about happy people. And I know we discussed secrets of happy families last time. But I was intrigued by, what is this equation that people seem to have solved about happiness? And at the time, I was turning 50. So this was, 5 years. Then it was a while ago. So I received my AARP first notification of membership.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so proud of it. And believe it or not, that particular magazine was Michael J. Fox on the cover. So I was thumbing through it, and in that was this quote where he's talking about, when you go out the door in the morning, choose happiness. Try to go for the loving response to any situation. The author of this article says, "You seem happy. Are you?" And he replies, "When my kids leave a mess all over the living room, I get pissed off. I'm not Superman, but as a kid who was short, I've always thought if short is my biggest problem, then life is a bowl of cherries. I really love being alive. I love my family and my work. I love the opportunity to have that I have to do things. That's what happiness is." All right. The thing is, Michael J. Fox is more than just not tall. There are other things in his life that he's been dealt with and dealing with. To complement our discussion around his optimistic outlook, you brought in a couple of show and tell items here. I love this. Joining us on the podcast today is Marty Mcfly.
That's right. So Michael J. Fox has always been one of my favorite actors. Like growing up, I idolized all of the Back to the Future movies, and even used to tell people I kind of based some of my personality development on Marty Mcfly, which may or may not have been a positive. But I really admired him as an actor, and then as I became an adult and kind of delved into some of the things that he did outside of acting, realizing that he, faces Parkinson's disease every day, and that he has this foundation dedicated to that research, to helping people with that condition, I just thought to myself, how does this guy get up every day and strive and make these strides in his personal life, in his career, while he's dealing with such a traumatic thing? And then lo and behold, he put out a book. So I think it's actually his third book. And even as much of a mega fan as I am, I didn't know that he had 2 previous books. So I saw it. It's titled No Time Like the Future. And I grabbed it immediately because I thought maybe this will give me some insight into somebody that I've spent 30 years.
And he wrote this in 2020.
He did.
Like during the pandemic.
Yes, sir.
All right, so I'm really intrigued. I've not read the book. So what are some of your impressions?
Well, you should take the book home with you today. Okay. You should definitely read it. I intend to buy his other 2 and read them as well. But I was thinking about that, how he balances all of this stuff. And so I'm reading the book and found out that he'd had several medical conditions that I knew nothing about. I knew he had Parkinson's disease. He was also diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and he had a pretty severe spinal cord tumor that required, the world's top neurosurgeon to take care of. And so I'm reading through this, and I'm thinking, one thing after the other that to an average person, to me, would probably be a monumental setback, would change my outlook on life, right? And yet, here he is smiling all the time. And so he has a quote that he gave at a lecture for the Michael J. Fox Foundation. I don't have any choice whether or not I have Parkinson's, but surrounding that non-choice is a million other choices that I can make. And so that kind of resonated with me to think, he's saying that he's in control. He has a neurological disorder that he has no real control over, and yet he's saying he's in control. And how does he have that outlook? So he says in the book, that it's all optimism. And the way he explains it is optimism rooted in gratitude. So he says that optimism is sustainable when you keep coming back to gratitude. And what follows is acceptance. It doesn't mean that you can't endeavor to change. It doesn't mean that you have to accept it as a punishment or a penance. It just means to put whatever you're dealing with in its proper place, and then you get to see how much of the rest of your life you have to thrive in. And so he uses that word, thrive. He's still very much looking from goal to goal, from task to task. And I was just impressed. And so reading through, I kind of saw a roadmap for how his outlook on life can overlay with mental health. And that's why I brought it in here today.
I love it. You connected two themes there, I guess, that he lays out, that optimism is driven by or somehow connected to gratitude. So we have, and there's ample research out there that demonstrates, the power of gratitude in promoting and helping people optimize good mental health. I noticed there were some statistics here, I think you pose here. So why should we believe in and practice optimism? And multiple studies over the last decade have linked optimism to better coping skills, lower stress levels, higher persistence when pursuing goals, help combat symptoms of anxiety, depression, mood disorders. My goodness, on the heels of 2020 and, trying to get forward momentum and movement into a new year, that seems to be a good place to start.
Absolutely.
So how does it work?
From reading his book, I pulled up some research. He didn't reference anything, specific. I just started looking on my own. And I think it's always been kind of a mantra for people, especially in the last decade or so of positive psychology really taking off of, happy outlooks produce better outcomes, right? And so I was wondering, well, what does that mean, right? How do you get to those better outcomes? And so just focusing on the positives of our lives, leading to those better outcomes, there are specific things that kind of help that happen. So if you're focusing on a specific issue and you're not ruminating on a past event, then you're not kind of blocking your mental strain on this one thing. You're opening your mind to focus on these new endeavors, these new things that you're taking on. And emphasize the positives of whatever you're dealing with. We all know that life is a roller coaster, but my outlook is not always optimistic on everything, but has always been kind of a balance, right? If there's a negative, there's a positive. So focus on the positives and not the negatives. Focus on positive emotions. When you get sad, when you're upset, you're angry, working on things like acceptance or finding the humor in situations, I think is very beneficial. And I think the biggest thing that I took away from some of the stuff that I read was that focusing on optimism helps you to develop better coping skills. So better adaptive responses, you're more likely to consistently use them, and that gives you the ability to potentially function better in the face of different adversities.
Yeah. I mean, what great advice. And I love how you frame these things. I think they're all, the part of the Ridgeview's COVID response team effort in 2020 was we packaged a community presentation around, well, there's our chiming bell. You are a popular man.
This morning.
Right. It's probably Michael J. Fox calling
that
to
would be
say thank you for reading the book.
We'll have to tag him.
Yes, yeah. I like that. So in 2020 we had packaged packaged a community presentation about trying to cope with the pandemic, with the coronavirus. And we are currently trying to repackage another community training just about, recovery in 21. And I think, I'm just sort of thinking out loud here, but I like the idea of integrating some of Michael J. Fox's stuff into that presentation, because I think he's got some great advice, not only coming from a place of circumstances that are beyond his control, but actionable ways to help practice optimism, to simple, doable steps to get some forward movement so that it becomes more habit, and as a result can actually lead to a level of happiness. So yeah, that's great stuff. I think Marty Mcfly would be very pleased with this conversation.
I think so. I don't know that he ever would have gone to 2020 if he had the choice.
I think you're right about that. So I love this, you say here, a nod out to musicals of old. We all have experienced hardships, low times, setbacks. Amen to that. Just remember Annie singing, "The sun will come out tomorrow." Are you going to sing for us?
I'm not. That's not in my skill set. I just brought the props. So, that song is infamous. There's actually a Michael J. Fox movie that I can't remember the name of, but he's like a talent scout, and there are kids in that movie that are singing that song throughout, and that's what made me think of it. But reading the book, I kept reading these individual stories that he puts in here about life experiences that he's had. And again, I just thought, man, that would knock me off my feet. How do you just, the next day he's back up, he's back at it. So he keeps talking about this optimism, but how do you be the optimist, right? How do you develop that skill set? So, genetics play a role. Some socioeconomic status, other factors from the environment that we can't necessarily control play a role. But there are a lot of, I think we talked about this in one of our earlier episodes, micro steps, right? There are micro steps that we can take every day. Nobody is saying, get up tomorrow, smile, 24 hours, everything will be perfect, right? But make that effort, make that step. And so just some tips, working on becoming more mindful, focus on being engaged and attentive to the here and now, to what you're presently dealing with. Again, not ruminating on the past. Focus on your efforts is one that I really like, not just the outcome. You can make a lot of good steps towards a goal and still not reach the goal necessarily, but it gives you a chance to reframe, to think about how you're going to proceed from there. And it's something he talked about in the book that I liked when he was referencing golf. And not to sound negative, but I thought, how does a 50-plus-year-old man with Parkinson's and fibromyalgia and a spinal cord tumor, how do you play golf? I'm 34 and in relatively good health, and I'm horrible at golf, So, and in the book, he says he's horrible at golf, actually. It's not about the outcome of the game. It's not about playing 17 bad holes. It's if he plays that 18th hole right, you know. What a great mindset, and I loved that. Something else he talks about working with some of his care team is creating it into existence. So when you want positive things to happen, focusing on them, writing them down, speaking them out into the universe, positive affirmations, and really just changing your thinking style. Things change over time. What's happening right now is not the rest of your life. It's not your entire life. It's one piece. And being aware that you can take steps, those micro steps, to change things one day at a time, to have that positive outlook.
You're right. It is remarkable. I've got a little quote stuck up on my cork board in my office that says, I think it's an old Talmud. Well, there's some uncertainty as to the origin of this, but it is, we do not see things as they are. We see things as we are. Now, if clearly Michael J. Fox sees things as he is, which is an optimistic, positive outlook place, which means he can endure with a lot of difficulty that may be out there. I sometimes we get trapped in our own stuff, and I'll share this with you. I'll try to do it without bursting into tears. But Sunday, so we're recording this on Friday, but Sunday, I know you're a dog lover. My wife and I had to put our 15-year-old dachshund to eternal rest.
Sorry to hear that.
Yes, it was rough. It was rough. But you highlight here one of the things that he recommends about being an optimist, and that is the practice of gratitude. And I've found as the days go and as the sun comes up tomorrow and that loss kind of recedes a little further in the past, we are finding ourselves practicing gratitude for the 15 wonderful years that we had with him, and that our kids had with him. He was such a good dog, and a good member of the family. But the sun does come out tomorrow. I won't frighten our producer, Ed Purdy, with singing it either, but I do think it has a valuable just life lesson, and for people that are still struggling with COVID or getting their vaccine or getting back to employment or getting just on firm ground again, figuring out ways to deal with the hardships, the heartaches, the heartbreak through some life lessons that someone like Michael J. Fox can offer. Why not try them?
Absolutely, and he kind of ends his book on a note that makes me think that way too. Not only was the book published and actually out in the market in 2020, he was concluding writing it in 2020, so during the pandemic. So he has all of this personal stuff going on, and now there is a shared global experience that is negative in some way for most of us. So the epilogue of the book talks about that and how the pandemic came about. He grabbed his wife, his 4 children, one who is a minor. I think the rest are all adults, but they all gathered in one of their homes in Long Island, and they sheltered in place. And so he talks very briefly about some of the hardships there that, his daughter missed prom. She wasn't able to have an in-person graduation. They were struggling to, as the adult children, all work from the same home, via online resources. He attended a virtual funeral for a longtime friend, which is something that I can't even imagine, can't fathom how difficult that must be. And then after he explains those things, he turns around and talks about his gratitude for the circumstances. And we have talked about that in multiple episodes, about all of the negative things that COVID-19 may have produced, but some of the positives that we were able to take away from it. And he referenced the same thing, that more time with family, quality time with family, that, being busy and adults and actors, and they didn't necessarily have time to do that before. That his daughter had the ability to still attend virtual high school and graduate, even without the ceremony. She graduated high school. And I just thought, I need to be this guy. I need to work on this mentality, because we've all struggled in some way. And so I think maybe going into 2021 or the rest of 2021, it is a good note to work on. And maybe there are some reasons to be optimistic as far as COVID-19. Vaccines are available, case counts are dropping, hospitalizations are dropping, some school systems are returning to in-person. Maybe the sun is going to keep coming out tomorrow. So.
Well, I can see why he's a hero of yours. We talked in previous episodes about the value of a coach. The how a therapist can even kind of be a coach for people, or the helpline staff that are counselors that are providing that can kind of be a coach. So Coach Fox, welcome to the Yates team. I look forward to reading your book. Take us out with a Doc Brown quote here. I love this about the future.
Again, Back to the Future, one of my favorite movies. So Doc Brown says that your future hasn't been written yet. No one's has. Your future is whatever you want to make it, so make it a good one.
I can hear actually him saying that. If you haven't seen these movies, check them out. Buddy, I appreciate you coming in. This has been a great conversation.
I loved it.
Good stuff. I feel a little more optimistic myself today as a result of this conversation. Folks, we hope, well, there's our friendly bell again. Friends, we hope that you too have found this to be a helpful conversation and maybe one that gives you a little more optimism in knowing that the sun will indeed come out tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. We always like to remind you of our helpline, 833-503-0348, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day of the week, including Sundays. Give us a shout if you need to, and please tune in next week for our next episode. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.